Most men never realize that attention is not love, loyalty, or connection, it is a resource. And like every valuable resource in human history, the moment it becomes too available, it loses psychological value. This is the hidden dynamic operating beneath modern relationships. A man gives away his attention freely because he believes consistency proves sincerity. He responds instantly, checks her activity constantly, explains himself without being asked, and remains emotionally available at all earned hours. What he does not understand is that human beings are not wired to respect what comes without effort. The mind naturally assigns value to what appears limited, controlled, and difficult to access. This is why the man who is always present slowly becomes invisible. His attention becomes background noise, predictable, emotionally safe, and predictability rarely creates desire. Watch how people behave when they fear losing access to someone. Their energy changes immediately. They become more earned, alert, more emotionally invested, more curious. This is not romance, it is psychology. The human brain is deeply reactive to uncertainty and scarcity. A woman who receives endless validation from a man no longer feels the emotional tension of earning his focus. She begins to assume his loyalty before she deserves it. And once certainty replaces curiosity, the emotional game changes completely. This is why many men feel confused when the more they give, the less they are valued. They mistake earned emotional overinvestment for strength, when in reality it often signals fear of being ignored, replaced, or forgotten. The uncomfortable truth is that attention is one of the purest forms of power because it communicates priority. Wherever you place sustained attention, you give psychological importance. People can feel this instinctively. A disciplined man understands this and becomes extremely selective with where his emotional energy goes. He does not ignore people to manipulate them. Earned. He simply refuses to reward inconsistency, disrespect, or emotional games with unlimited access to his mind. That restraint creates mystery because it is rare. Most people are emotionally impulsive. They react immediately to loneliness, attraction, and insecurity. But the person who controls his attention controls the emotional frame around him. And the harsh reality is this: the world does not measure your value by how much attention you give it, measures it by how difficult it is to take your earned attention away from yourself. People fear silence because silence removes their ability to control perception. The moment conversation stops, masks begin to crack. This is why most people talk too much, explain too much, text too quickly, and rush to fill every uncomfortable pause with noise. They believe communication creates control, when in reality excessive communication often exposes insecurity. Silence does something far more dangerous. It forces people to sit alone with their own earned thoughts, interpretations, and emotional uncertainty. And the human mind is deeply uncomfortable in that space. Most individuals would rather hear an unpleasant answer than experience the tension of not knowing. That tension reveals everything. Watch what happens when you stop reacting emotionally in a conversation. Someone insults you, tests you, ignores you, or tries to provoke you, and instead of defending yourself immediately, you remain calm and silent. The other person often becomes more earned anxious than you. They begin talking more, over-explaining, changing tone, or revealing hidden intentions without realizing it. Why? Because silence creates a psychological mirror. People start projecting their own fears, motives, and insecurities into the empty space you leave behind. This is why interrogators, negotiators, and emotionally intelligent people understand the hidden power of pauses. The person who speaks first after silence usually reveals the weaker emotional position. In earned relationships, silence becomes even more revealing. A woman who is used to controlling attention through emotion often becomes unsettled. When a man suddenly stops feeding every emotional fluctuation with immediate reassurance, if her interest was genuine, she becomes reflective and curious. But if her interest depended mainly on validation and control, her behavior becomes erratic. She reaches for reactions. She creates tension. She tests boundaries. Silence exposes intentions because it removes earned the comfort people rely on to maintain illusions. Without constant emotional feedback, people unconsciously reveal who they really are. Most men destroy their own power because they cannot tolerate emotional uncertainty. The moment they sense distance, they rush to explain themselves, demand clarity, or chase reassurance. They mistake emotional urgency for honesty. But emotionally disciplined people understand something most never learn. The strongest position in human interaction often belongs, earned, to the person who can remain composed without demanding immediate answers. Silence is not weakness. It is observation. It is restraint. It is control over impulse in a world addicted to reaction. And the disturbing truth is this: people rarely reveal themselves while they are speaking. They reveal themselves in how they behave when you stop speaking. Most people believe control is something you impose on others through dominance, persuasion, or force. But the highest form of psychological, earned, control begins internally with the ability to remain emotionally detached in situations designed to provoke you. This is the hidden advantage powerful people understand instinctively. The average person is emotionally predictable. Praise changes their confidence. Rejection changes their mood. Delayed replies create anxiety. Criticism creates defensiveness. Their emotions are constantly being controlled by external events, which means their behavior can also be controlled. Once someone learned, what triggers your fear, ego, loneliness, or anger, they no longer need strength to influence you. Your emotional reactions begin doing the work for them. This is why emotionally detached individuals appear almost dangerous in social situations. They do not rush to react. They do not chase immediate validation. They do not panic when attention disappears or when someone pulls away emotionally. And because they remain calm while others become emotionally chaotic, they naturally gain control over the emotional frame around them. Human beings unconsciously look to the calmer person as the psychological anchor in tense situations. This is why in arguments, negotiations, relationships, and power struggles, the individual who loses emotional control first usually loses influence shortly after. Watch how most men behave when emotionally attached to a woman. Their mood depends on her tone, her replies, her attention, her approval. One cold message ruins their peace. One delayed response, consumes their thoughts for hours. At that moment, they are no longer acting with clarity, they are acting under emotional dependency. And dependency creates weakness because it shifts your focus from observing reality to protecting your emotional comfort. Detached people see things others miss because emotion is no longer distorting their judgment. They notice manipulation faster. They recognize inconsistency sooner. They are harder to deceive because they are not desperate for specific, outcomes. But emotional detachment is often misunderstood. It is not the absence of feeling. It is mastery over expression and impulse. A detached person can feel deeply without becoming enslaved by those feelings. They can love without losing self-control. They can walk away without needing revenge, closure, or emotional theatrics. That restraint creates an unsettling presence because most people are ruled by urges they cannot control. In a world where everyone reacts instantly, emotionally, discipline feels almost unnatural. And the uncomfortable truth is this: the moment someone realizes they can emotionally destabilize you, they stop respecting you and start managing you. Most people believe pursuit creates clarity. They think the harder they chase, the more they will understand someone's feelings, intentions, or loyalty. But human behavior works in the opposite direction. Constant pursuit often hides the truth because attention itself becomes the reward. When someone knows they will continue receiving your energy regardless of their behavior, they have no reason to reveal their real intentions. They can remain inconsistent, emotionally distant, manipulative, or undecided while still enjoying the comfort of your attention. This is why many people stay trapped in confusing dynamics for months or even years. They keep chasing answers from individuals who are never confused, only comfortable being pursued. The moment you stop chasing, everything changes. Silence creates exposure. Distance removes emotional camouflage. Suddenly, the other person can no longer rely on your constant effort to maintain the connection. And this is where human nature reveals itself with brutal honesty. Some people disappear immediately because their true interest was never you, it was the validation, control, attention, or emotional security you provided. Others suddenly become more attentive, more curious, even more emotionally invested, not necessarily because they love you, earned deeply, but because your absence disrupts their sense of certainty. Human beings often do not recognize value while they possess it freely. They recognize it when access becomes uncertain. This is why ignoring can be psychologically revealing in ways conversation never is. Words are easy to manipulate. People say what protects their image. They promise consistency while behaving inconsistently. They speak about loyalty while keeping emotional options open. But behavior under emotional distance, earned, exposes reality much faster than emotional discussions ever will. Watch carefully what someone does when you stop initiating, stop explaining, stop seeking reassurance. Do they reach for connection with sincerity, or only when they sense their control fading? Most people accidentally expose their real priorities the moment they are no longer being emotionally fed. There is also something deeply uncomfortable about being ignored that unsettles the human ego. It forces people into uncertainty, and, earned, uncertainty removes psychological control. This is why many individuals become emotionally reactive when someone they expected to chase them suddenly becomes calm, detached, and unavailable. They are not reacting only to absence, they are reacting to the loss of influence. And influence is addictive. A disciplined man understands this dynamic. He does not ignore people to play childish games. He simply understands that withdrawal is often the fastest way to uncover truth, because when attention, earned, disappears, people stop performing for your approval and start revealing what they were truly connected to all along. And the harsh reality is this: the moment you stop chasing someone, you finally meet the version of them that was hidden behind your effort. Human beings are not obsessed with what they fully understand. They become obsessed with what remains partially hidden. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths about attraction and psychology. The mind is naturally drawn toward earned, unfinished emotional experiences, unanswered questions, and unpredictable behavior because uncertainty creates mental tension. And the brain hates unresolved tension. This is why people replay certain conversations in their head for days, overanalyze small changes in behavior, and become emotionally consumed by individuals who reveal themselves slowly. Mystery keeps the imagination active, and imagination is far more dangerous than reality because people begin creating fantasies stronger than earned truth itself. Most men destroy this psychological advantage without realizing it. They reveal everything too quickly: their intentions, emotions, insecurities, availability, and need for validation. They believe transparency will create closeness, but excessive availability often removes the very tension that creates fascination. Once someone feels they completely understand you, predict your behavior, and access your attention whenever they want, your emotional impact weakens. You become earned, mentally familiar, and familiarity, while comforting, rarely creates obsession. The human mind craves emotional stimulation, and predictability slowly numbs emotional intensity. Watch how people behave around someone slightly mysterious, not cold, not manipulative, simply emotionally controlled and difficult to fully read. That person speaks less about themselves, reveals selectively, disappears into their own world at times, and does not constantly seek attention. Others begin projecting onto earned. They automatically, curiosity grows, small details become psychologically amplified. A delayed reply feels significant. A brief compliment feels powerful. Why? Because the mind fills empty spaces with imagination, and imagination often creates stronger emotional attachment than direct reality ever could. This is why social media has quietly damaged many people's psychological presence. Constant exposure destroys mystery. Every thought is posted. Every emotion is explained. Every movement is earned, documented. There is no space left for curiosity, no silence, no emotional uncertainty. And without uncertainty, people stop wondering about you. They stop mentally returning to you when you are absent. Mystery requires restraint, the ability to hold parts of yourself back instead of constantly performing for attention. But there is something deeper beneath all of this. Truly mysterious people are not pretending to be mysterious. They are simply focused on their own inner world more than earned, controlling how others perceive them. That emotional independence creates gravity. People become obsessed because they sense there is something they cannot fully access or control, and human nature is addicted to what feels emotionally out of reach. And the dangerous truth is this: the moment people feel they have completely figured you out, the obsession ends because the imagination no longer has anything left to chase. Most people stay in situations that slowly destroy them, not because they are loyal, but because they are afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over. Afraid of losing emotional access to someone who has already begun losing respect for them. This is the hidden tragedy behind many relationships, friendships, and even social dynamics. Human beings will tolerate disrespect, manipulation, inconsistency, and emotional exhaustion simply to avoid the discomfort of separation. And the moment someone senses you are emotionally incapable of leaving, the balance power shifts permanently. Your presence stops being a choice and becomes an expectation. That is when people begin taking you for granted without even realizing it. The ability to walk away calmly is rare because it requires something most people never develop: emotional independence. Not anger, not revenge, not dramatic exits designed to force guilt or attention. True power is quieter than that. It is the ability to detach without needing to destroy the other person in the process. Most individuals leave emotionally long before they leave physically, which is why their exits are filled with resentment, emotional outbursts, and desperate attempts to regain control. But the person who walks away calmly communicates something psychologically unsettling. I valued you, but I value myself more. That level of self-control is difficult to manipulate because it comes from internal certainty rather than emotional desperation. Watch how people react when they realize they no longer control your emotional state. At first they test you. They withdraw attention, delay responses, create emotional tension to see if you will chase them. Most people fail these tests immediately because their fear of loss overrides their self-respect. They beg for explanations, demand closure, or tolerate behavior they once promised themselves they would never accept. But the person capable of calmly leaving breaks the emotional pattern entirely. They do not react impulsively because they understand something dangerous about human nature. People often respect boundaries only after they realize access to you is no longer guaranteed. There is also a deeper psychological reason calm detachment feels so powerful. Emotional reactions reveal attachment. Calmness reveals options. The person who can leave without chaos sends an unconscious message that their identity, peace, and purpose do not collapse in the absence of another person. And that realization unsettles people deeply because most relationships are built on emotional dependency disguised as love. The harsh truth is that many people do not truly appreciate your presence until they feel your absence becoming permanent. And by then, it is often too late because the strongest person in the room is usually the one who can walk away without looking back for permission to stay.